Hi friends, it's time for an Apex Legends Season 7 weapons tier list. I've put together a full list of every weapon currently in Apex Legends Season 7, and I've done some analysis of their actual stats, and I've combined them along with my personal preference and experience so far in Season 7 of what works well, and hopefully this list will show you which weapon could be the best one for you to use in Apex Legends Season 7. I haven't included the care package weapons, I should say that, just because I think they're all really strong and probably all S tier weapons, so we don't really need to include them in this list. I've focused on all the floor loot weapons available. I've also got clips of each weapon, and I've sorted them into tiers of E going up to S. So we start from the worst weapons in tier E, all the way up to the best weapons in tier S. Again, like I said, some of this is personal preference, and from my experience so far of Season 7, but again, I have also used some stats, so there is some facts behind my choices here as well. Before I get started, let me just say we're so close to 1,000 subs on this channel, so if you're not subscribed already, please consider hitting that subscribe button. We're so close to 1,000 subs, I'd really appreciate it if you can help me get there. Okay, let's get into the tier list. So, we'll work our way up, starting with tier E. In tier E, we have the base versions of the P2020 and the Mozambique. I think it's fair to say everyone will agree with me on this. These two are probably not the best weapons in Apex Legends, and it's fair to say in any tier list they would be near the bottom, if not the bottom. And I do feel like, yes, the Mozambique's a bit more useful with 4 rounds, but let's face it, if you've got one of these two in the end game, it's probably going to be quite hard for you. Let's move on to tier D then, because tier E is nice and easy. Again, tier D I've got the Mozambique and P20, but this time with the hammer point rounds. I feel like it's fair to add them to a category or tier higher than their base weapons, because the hammer point rounds do make these weapons a little bit more useful. And in that sense, okay, you can do a lot more damage with them, and they become a little bit more of a viable secondary weapon. But you wouldn't really have them as your primary weapon still, even with the hop up. So I feel like tier D is the right place for these two weapons. I've also got the RE45 here. I do think the RE45 is a useful weapon, and the faster fire rate compared to the other pistols does help. It is kind of like a baby R99 in that sense, but the mag is so small it doesn't do much damage, and I feel like it could definitely be a hindrance when you get closer to the end game. Speaking of tier C, let's jump into tier C. So here we've got the EVA 8, the Havoc, the Alternator, the Spitfire, the Longbow, and the Charge Rifle. So tier C was saying these are kind of weapons that are getting slightly better, but they're not quite top tier weapons, and you probably wouldn't carry these to the end game if you had a choice. So let's talk about each one in a little bit more detail. The EVA 8 is a useful shotgun, better than the Mozambique. You've got a bit more maneuverability and a bit more legroom with some more ammo in it, but at the same time it just doesn't quite compare to the Mastiff, which we'll get to a bit later in this list. It's probably, again, not one you would carry to the end game. You might have it as a secondary, potentially, if you've got a level 3 bolts for it, but as a personal preference, I wouldn't really carry this to the end game. The Havoc might be the strongest in this tier, and the main reason I feel it's C tier is just because of the recent nerfs it's had in previous updates to Season 7. I feel like it would have been tier B, it might have even been tier A back in, I think it was Season 5 when it was just so strong, but over time they've given it a bunch of nerfs which have made the recoil just a little bit crazy, and I feel like it's hard to hit shots, especially at range. The best advice I can say for using the Havoc is start firing a second before you plan to shoot the enemy, because even with a turbocharger, it has a little bit of a charge up time, and if you compare that to the fire rate of the R301 and the flatline, it's just much slower, and you can easily get melted if your enemy's got a Volt or an R99 before you can even start firing your Havoc. Also in this tier we've got the Alternator. I would say the Alternator is just a solid mid-tier SMG, and I feel like this category is perfect for it. It just doesn't compare to the other SMGs, to be fair. You can carry it to the end game, and I have seen people do it, even the pros, but I just feel if you saw an R99, you'd probably switch it out for that, or even an R301, you would choose that over an Alternator. The Spitfire's also here. Again, it's had some nerfs in recent times, along with the Devotion. I feel like maybe Season 6 was its best season, or maybe Season 5, where you could just do some ridiculous hipfire movement with the Spitfire, but since then, over time they've nerfed it, and it's just not quite as good anymore, and therefore I think C fits quite nicely. Finally, we've got 2 snipers in this category. These are fairly decent snipers, but again, they're probably the bottom of the sniper genre. You've got the longbow, even with the skull piercer. I just feel like it wouldn't get much higher in this list. I would always swap a longbow for a sentinel. And the same goes for the charge rifle. I feel like these two weapons are both annoying weapons. If someone's hitting you from distance, it's just going to annoy you, but it wouldn't necessarily win you the game. It's quite hard to get downs with these weapons straight up. I mean, it does happen, you get charge rifled in the head and you get knocked down, but I feel like that's a lot rarer than getting hit with a triple take or a sentinel. So moving on to tier B, we've got the Mastiff, we've got the G7 Scout, the Flatline, L-Star, Triple Take, and Sentinel. So I said tier B is kind of the better weapons you would consider for the end game. Maybe not always your first choice, but definitely the kind of weapons you would pick over weapons in the lower tiers. So the Mastiff is a favourite of the pros, and if you can hit your shots, I probably would say Mastiff is tier A, maybe even tier S. I know if you watch a lot of the ALG tournaments, you'll see a lot of the pros carrying Mastiff to the end game. And like I said, if you can hit your shots, great. But I'm also thinking about the average casual gamer for this list, and let's face it, there are so many occasions with the Mastiff where you just hit 13 damage and you just don't hit a shot properly. And that just happens too often, in my mind, for the casual gamer, for me to put this higher than a tier B. The G7 Scout is next. It's kind of the perfect combination between an assault rifle and a sniper, and if you don't feel super confident with a sniper, then maybe the G7 is the one for you. It's just got a bit more leniency with the faster fire rate compared to other snipers, and if you want to do a double light combo with an R99, it works a treat, I can tell you that, especially for Season 7 on Olympus. And the buffs in recent years does make it a little bit better, especially with hipfire as well. I just feel like it doesn't stand out in either category. You wouldn't say it's the best assault rifle or the best sniper, but if you put it together, it's a nice combination of both. So in that sense, I think it fits nicely in this tier. Next is the Flatline. It's the heavy version of the R301 for sure, but I feel like there are benefits to both, but in reality, I would choose an R301 over a Flatline. If I had the same attachments and the same amount of ammo, I would choose the R301 over the Flatline. And it's little things like the fire rate, the ease of recoil control, I just feel benefit the R301 slightly more than the Flatline, and that's why I feel like the Flatline sits nicely in tier B. The L-Star is next. So the buff this season has made the L-Star really strong, and I feel like it's become a bit more viable as a weapon. There's a lot more control over the recoil and also over the fire rate. If you feather the fire button instead of just holding it straight down, you can actually do a lot of damage without any overheating. The cooldown time is greatly reduced, and because of that it becomes a lot more useful. Having said that, it's probably the most likely weapon that I would swap out. For example, if I found a devotional revolt, I would always swap the L-Star for one of those. Finally in tier B we have two snipers. Probably the best snipers, Triple Take and Sentinel. They did nerf the Triple Take slightly, which is why I think B tier is about the right place for it. The built-in choke does make a difference, and there's still a lot of damage being done with the Triple Take for sure. I've also put the Sentinel in this category. This one's maybe a bit more for personal preference. I just love the Sentinel. The way it shoots, the rhythm that you can get with the Sentinel, I just really like it. I feel like B tier is the right place for the Sentinel, but you'll see it a bit later on because the charged version this season is ridiculously insane. Let's get to the final tiers though. So A tier, we've got the R301, the Hemlock, the Sentinel Charged, and the Devotion. Let's start by thinking about the R301. As I said earlier, it's kind of the relative of the Flatline, it's the light version of the Flatline, and it's kind of the ultimate assault rifle, I would say. It's a nice combination between fast fire rate and good damage. If you can hit headshots with the R301, you get the assault rifle headshot multiplier, but you get a decent fire rate with that. The Hemlock also sits here. It did receive a slight nerf this season, but it just still feels so strong. The biggest benefit of the Hemlock I found is that it's got long range and short range capability in the same weapon. You can switch on single fire and kind of create a mini sniper rifle which has a very fast fire rate, similar to the G7, but you can even hit it even faster with the single fire Hemlock, and it just does so much damage. You can then also switch it to burst fire for those close up encounters and just melt people. I know they've changed the recoil to try and make it a bit harder, but it's still very, very strong. Next we've got the charged Sentinel. So we saw the Sentinel as its base weapon sit in B tier, but I think once it's charged it becomes another beast of a weapon. It's kind of like a mini Kraber in your hands. The possibility of being able to do 170 damage in one shot, in fact over 170, is just crazy, and I've definitely been hitting some insane shots in Season 7. And I do feel, compared to the other snipers, the Sentinel, when it's charged, does have the ability to down players, and even wipe whole teams. Finally, we have the Devotion in this category. It's still strong. I know it's had a few nerfs recently, and that's probably taken it down from S tier when it was in the care package and when it came back into floor loot. I know a lot of people were getting melted by the Devotion. It's slightly less common now, but it's still a very strong weapon, and it's definitely the best LMG in the game. I feel it sits in A tier. I feel like that's a fair place for it. And finally, let's move into the last tier, the S tier. We've got the Wingman, the Vault, and the R99. For sure, these are the best weapons in Apex, if you can hit your shots, of course. But they just offer so much versatility, so much movement, and at the same time plenty of damage. I feel like these are the weapons to choose. If you can get good with them, they really will help you win games, for sure. But let's start with the Wingman. With or without the Skull Piercer, if you can hit your shots, it's insanely good. I've definitely been getting better with the Wingman in Season 7, and I'm winning a lot more duels, and if you can get good, it really will help you win games. Why? Well, it's just got the ability to do so much damage per shot, while at the same time giving you maximum movement. It's just such a great weapon in terms of damage and mobility. It allows you to ADS while still having amazing strafing speed and doing plenty of damage. So I would definitely recommend practicing with the Wingman. I know a lot of you struggle to hit your shots, and it will come with time. Just practice, my friends, just practice. Next we have the Vault. To be fair, I think the Vault and R99 are similar, so we can talk about them together. They both have a ridiculously fast fire rate, although the R99 is slightly faster, and they both got the best time to kills in the game. The R99 has the best time to kill, and then the Vault is in second place. If you can hit your shots with these two weapons, you will start winning more games for sure. I would say the Vault is a little easier to control if you're not a big fan of recoil. The faster fire rate of the R99 means that you could end up missing a lot more shots before you even know it. So in that sense, the Vault might be a little bit better for the more casual gamer. But having the R99 back as floor loot is awesome this season, and as far as SMGs go, both have a fair amount of distance that you can get from them, given that they're SMGs. I feel like these two weapons you could easily carry to the end game. And just one little piece of advice for these two weapons: if you feel like you're missing your shots with your first 1 or 2 bullets that you fire, here's a trick: just stop firing for a second, adjust your aim, and then fire again. The reason is because the fire rate's so quick. I've seen a lot of people just know that they're missing their first 2 shots and they just carry on missing with the whole mag. But actually, if you just adjust your shots, you've wasted 2 bullets, but you still have a whole mag where you can empty into your opponent and do decent damage. So give that a try. Also, practice holding down as you fire. I think that's the easiest and most basic way to control the recoil for both of these guns. You'll need to make slight adjustments as you get towards the end of the mag, but for sure, the best starting point is just to practice holding down as you fire for both these SMGs. And there you have it. There's my full tier list of Apex Legends Season 7. Hopefully it's given you a good idea of which weapons you might want to choose for Apex Legends Season 7. Let me know what you think down below. Like I said, it's personal preference these, along with some official stats, so you might very well have your own preference for your tier list. So let me know in the comments down below which weapons you like. For now though, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later.